This video will be the best video for introducing someone into the topic of what our society now knows as the Flat Earth Conspiracy. Please send this to anyone who's being resistant. Maybe it'll help when you want to bring the subject of Flat Earth to light and at least have a discussion. This topic has been taken and distorted by the media. We have people who say flat tards and literally name call anyone who brings the subject up. Look, I want to be fair. I know a lot of the people who talk about this subject or make a video on Flat Earth claim to have all the answers. Well, let me straight up say it. I'm not trying to prove Flat Earth or give you some detailed explanation on the Flat Earth model. I'm going to take a different approach. The goal of this video is to prove that this subject deserves to be talked about. Anyone with the audacity to resist that statement is either mad or has serious issues. Most of the people who comment blindly really do just want to emit negative emotion by making people look stupid. Well, I won't back down. I believe that we've lost our eye. The issue is fraud beyond belief and humanity losing ancient sacred knowledge. We don't believe the world is magical anymore. In order to begin, first we have to understand that history has been manipulated on a grand scale. From Connor McDarry. It was the idea held by the leaders of the Roman Church and state, they were practically one, that all power should be centralized in the head of the church who was also emperor of the state, and any and all religious institutions which in any way conflicted with this ideal were to be done away with. For this reason the mystery cults were suppressed, and initiation into the ancient or esoteric mysteries where no religious establishment, worship, or practice would exist which would draw and hold men to it other than the Roman state church. And besides, as the study and preparation necessary for those who were selected for initiation into the higher mysteries was such as to develop a highly philosophic and spiritual state of mind, such study and preparation did not comport with the object which the church rulers had in view. Such minds would not yield adherence to a mere political and idolatrous church whose doctrines were, in the main, intended for the uninstructed multitude. Such minds could not be dominated by a political or mercenary priesthood. They were enlightened men and they stood in the way of the church project. Therefore, the institutions which produced such men were to be suppressed. This quote says it all. Look into Connor McDarry. I'll leave the link in the description. But basically what this tells us is that a long time ago, the secret wisdom of the world was sought out and destroyed. That's the first point. Don't skip over that, because with that point alone, we should question everything we know. The Romans are responsible for everything, and those in the know are aware of the control that the Vatican still have to this day. Space. The whole idea of sci-fi is relatively new. It seems obvious to me that this was propaganda and social engineering for its day. This changed our whole cosmology. We began to think that we can travel the universe, explore other planets, communicate with other life forms. We have Hollywood with Steven Spielberg creating classics. Think about the impact that has on a society. They start to believe in a new cosmology. Society has become godless, or the better way to say that is, it has forgotten that the world is a conscious creation, or that we are special. In the movie Space Odyssey 2001 by Stanley Kubrick, the symbolism is twofold. They are telling you the truth mixed with fantasy. The fantasy is that our god is some alien god, and also just the fact that it was a motion picture event for its time with all the visual effects, leading people to fall for the fake space cosmology. On the other hand, Stanley Kubrick secretly tells you Saturn is your god. Think about it, we have hit series like Star Trek, and then add Star Wars in the mix. I mean, people are obsessed with this stuff. Have you seen the lines for a new movie, game? This is the new religion. Hollywood knows this. They're feeding you religion without you even being aware of it. So now, in the modern day, we have literally everyone to the age of 35 to 60 being completely brainwashed by this sci-fi propaganda movement of the 1900s. You see, this was all part of the plan. Space Odyssey was made to make the masses think that NASA was farther along than it really was. There's also a blatant occult agenda. They are trying to suppress this knowledge by showing you in symbolic form, so it goes to the deep depths of your subconscious mind. We know most of this stuff already. The deal with Kubrick is that supposedly he is the one who helped shoot the moon landing. Not my theory, not trying to prove it, look into it. Jay Widener's work goes over a comparative analysis of the moon landing footage with Kubrick's special effects work in the 2001 Space Odyssey movie, so take a look. and you can come to your own conclusions. Just take what we know about history into consideration, and also think about why have we not been able to go back to the moon? You know, I remember some friend telling me like, oh, we've been to the moon many times, but I'm calling BS on that. It's 2019, right? Shouldn't we have moon hotels by now? Yeah, that's not happening. The moon landing wasn't real. I'm not trying to prove it. I'm just trying to lay that down, okay? I'm not convinced, alright? How do you lose the footage? Aliens. Another reason why people become so emotional is because they hold the idea of aliens dear to their heart. Look, I'm with you. I used to be crazy about aliens. That was like the first topic that got me into all this stuff. But once you start to connect the dots, you realize that it's a sham. Let's see what Graham Hancock has to say.
One of the conclusions that I came to with my research on supernatural is that certain categories of beings that are referred to in traditions all around the world, shamans call them spirits. In medieval Europe, they were called fairies and elves. And in modern society, I would suggest they're called aliens. That all of these are the result of experiences in altered states of consciousness. And that if we are in the alert, problem-solving mode of consciousness, we are not going to have those experiences. But in an altered state of consciousness, there's a remarkable unanimity and uniformity and similarity amongst these three supposedly different categories of beings, spirits, fairies, and so-called aliens today. I really went into this in some depth in my research, and I found that there are really astonishing similarities amongst these three categories of beings. Very commonly, shamans, just as we saw from the painted caves, will encounter a spirit being in a therianthropic form, part animal and part human. I was astonished to discover that fairies in medieval Europe were also very frequently encountered in that form. And I have a woodcut from Holland in the 15th century on my desk, which shows a group of fairies dancing in a ring. And if you look closely at them, you see that they are therianthropes, that they have horns and hooves, that they're part animal and part human. And again, in the modern phenomenon of alien abductions, and we have massive documentation on this as a result of John Mack's work, for example. Very frequently, the abductee will first see a being who is an animal, or part animal and part human in form, later perhaps transforms into the more familiar grey type of entity. So there's that common motif running through all three of these experiences. What were fairies best known for and feared for in medieval Europe? It was abducting human beings. What are aliens today best known and feared for? Abductions. What happens with shamans? Very frequently they experience an abduction into the spirit world. It's their first encounter.
Now, I know that many researchers have decided what their cosmology is. For example, Graham Hancock believes in the globe pair model. But it's okay, because, like I said, history has been manipulated and suppressed for hundreds if not thousands of years by corporations and national interest. Remember, Graham would lose his reputation if he talked about flat Earth. But here's how I see it. I think there's a metaphysical aspect to all of this that the masses can't see, especially these a-holes who keep saying flat tards. Some Christians believe them to be demons. Who knows? I'm not trying to prove anything. I just want to be able to talk about it. I'm going to say that they're beings that live on higher planes or beyond the edge of our reality. In our modern day, this is referred to as the astral realm. Maybe these beings live in the astral and they can see us, but we can't see them. Fake academia. Okay, so the people who reject this with strong negativity, meaning they comment with name calling, I consider these people bullies. I'm just going to call them the flat earth police because every time someone brings this up, literally there's no discussion. Okay, so hey, flat earth police, take a chill pill. Don't worry, it's going to be okay. We can be fair and respectful. Otherwise, I disagree. I think you're in the wrong, especially if we take this presentation into light. I'm not trying to prove anything to you. You need to convince me that there is no discussion when it comes to flat earth. I have yet to be convinced. Now, we have the people in the know, The Flat Earth Police? Then we have the people who are truly just trying to understand. They didn't know that Flat Earth Society is complete BS. They didn't know that there was an occult side to all of this. So one of the points that the beginners in the Flat Earth Police just cannot accept is the idea that the government, space, the media, big pharma, and education are out to get you. Or in other words, there's a big conspiracy. Well, the truth is stranger than you may think. I just showed how history can be manipulated, and I'm not saying all of academia is a lie, I'm just saying it can be manipulated. I definitely am saying the way they present space is fake. No one taking a master class on being an astronaut is going to space, let me just break it to you. I'm saying the images from NASA are fake. Yes, they already admit that they're composites done on a computer using different data that they have stored. Okay, well if you actually buy into the media, then you have yet to open your eyes. People insist that I'm delusional, when most of the people who resist this content are being told what to think by the media and the news. The media never mentioned Flat Earth before it blew up on the internet with Eric Dubai. By the way, I don't agree with everything that Eric says, but he was the reason that that conspiracy blew up. Because he was a very critical mind, and he was asking amazing questions, and people loved it. It wasn't until his proofs video that people began to bash him on a level never seen before. And it was all because the media was there immediately to make this subject look ridiculous. People think because the news and science backs them up that gives them the right to be a-holes. Why do you think the news was scrambling to cover the Flat Earth? Yeah, they needed to program you. That is what the Flat Earth Society is. The Flat Earth Society is the strategy that the media, Wikipedia, and the Flat Earth Police use to make anyone who brings this subject up look like a moron. Okay, well, Flat Earth Society tries to take gravity into consideration and says that the plane is accelerating. See, this is the problem. When anyone but officials try to claim they know the answer to our cosmology, or the realm we live on, they lose. What I mean is, you're going to give them something to debate. That is not what I want to do. I am not trying to say, hey, we live on a flat earth. I think it's beyond our comprehension. What I'm saying is that it's not observable to us that we're on a pear spinning 1,000 miles per hour.
So you spin, when you spin pizza dough, it kind of flattens out. Yeah. Gets wider in the middle. So Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning. And it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere. It's oblate. And officially, it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator.
A little chubbier.
A little chubbier.
Yeah.
Chubby's a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
Yeah, no, I call BS. Convince me otherwise. I'm not convinced. And yes, I'm also not convinced by NASA or Elon Musk. It's so funny how many people worship Elon Musk when, in my opinion, he's just a puppet used by the media. I mean, come on, people are seriously buying this. Elon Musk on the Joe Rogan show? I mean, I don't know what it is about him, but he just kind of sketches me out. I'm calling BS on all those live streams that cut out. I'm also calling BS on the floating cars in space.
It looks so ridiculous and impossible. And you can tell it's real because it looks so fake.
Look, when Elon Musk is on the moon or Mars and it's not a blatant composite, then I will consider it. But until then, please stop using this as a proof for why the subject is, quote, retarded. There are other videos on YouTube that go into this, that debunk SpaceX for the fraud that it is. I'm not going to try to debunk it, because that's not what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to open your minds a little bit, get you to think, to let go of what you believe to be true. NASA and occult symbolism. From the beginning, NASA has embedded esoteric symbolism with most of their work. Why references to gods and goddesses, or planets in an esoteric sense? Well, we find that all NASA ever feeds us is CGI. Then they pay for projects that try to prove that we went to the moon. You see it in museums, you go to the IMAX, and then they BS you on how it's the greatest achievement of mankind, yet somehow they lost their original footage. Look, I can't prove to you in one short video the fraud that NASA is. You need to open your critical eye. Be aware of the past of humanity. Compare and contrast to where we're at now. Then come to your own conclusions. I know it seems crazy to believe that there are thousands of people working for an organization that are all keeping this big secret. Look, I don't think it's like that. I think this is a product of centuries. We need to see all the dots. That's why I go into other topics on my channel, because without understanding historical fraud, esoteric symbolism, and the occult, it becomes very difficult to put all the pieces together. It's not a conspiracy, guys. This is critical thinking, and if you feel something, then you need to follow that. Our society has lost the ability to follow intuition and to see signs within reality. This is one proof that reality is literally speaking to you. It happens every day, but so many refuse to see it. Round ball cosmology. Here are some of the main round ball proofs. The ancients knew it was round, GPS, satellites, the Giza connection, time zones. Look, I'm not going to try to prove to you without a shadow of a doubt that GPS and satellites are just a cover-up. I'm just going to tell you my opinion. My opinion is, I don't buy it. One thing I've always found fishy is that when they set up your satellite dish for TV, they always point it south. Go look at your dish now. It's most likely pointing south. I remember watching a video where somebody asked one of the workers who was installing these satellites, why do you always have to point it south? And he said there were stationary satellites in the south. Okay, so what? You're saying that there's satellites that stick to the Earth by gravity and that it's basically just floating in the sky in the south. Okay, alright. Show me a lab experiment where water sticks to a spinning ball. Look, I'm willing to learn. I just don't buy the official story. I'm not convinced. I think satellites are either some type of tech that can be high in the atmosphere, or it's just a cover-up using tall towers. Same goes for GPS. I'm not trying to prove it, just look into it. As for the Giza connection, I think that is just from a misunderstanding of the flat Earth model. The circumference of the globe and the circumference of the circle would be same, so I don't really get why people are using this as a point. Just imagine the globe being flattened. Now the question is understanding the true model, with the sun, the moon, and the planets. It might not even be flat. Remember, I'm implying that it could be beyond our comprehension. I just don't think we can use the Giza connection as a point until we better understand what this flat Earth model really is. Same goes for time zones. You can't really explain why flat Earth doesn't work unless you have a model. I'm saying that all the models on the internet are wrong. But what if eventually we could understand? In my opinion, no one has given an accurate description of the movements of these bodies. Science tells us that the sun is 92.96 million miles away, which keeps changing by the way. But yet we have the sun and moon aligning perfectly during an eclipse? You see, we've lost our ability to see, our ability to perceive. It is so obvious that we live in a special world, but people are so resistant to see it. Let's go over the Greeks. I believe that there was a change in mind. The Greeks used to talk about the concept of a logos. They would actually be able to hear the voice of God in their heads. Plato asserted a metaphysical concept of reality, that all material things are but reflections of their truer, perfected forms. This is the ancient concept of occult symbolism. The ancients, way before the Greeks, had a science in which they would communicate with the invisible by converting it into a symbol, which allowed them to work with those invisible forces with something concrete, something they understood. Well, eventually there was a transition. Aristotle came in and changed everything around. He's like, look, nothing is real that can be observed and tested. This is when we began to have a change in consciousness. We became overcritical, we became left-brained, and we lost the source with the logos. I believe this idea of the logos was a deeper connection with the astral realms. Their reality was more dreamlike, you could say, meaning the line between physical reality and the dream reality was thin, or not there at all. I'm giving you the secret here, for the wise. Reality is but a construction of the mind. After generations of the collective consciousness willingly descending into matter, we have completely forgotten our true history. They started to become overcritical with their observations. They lost access to the astral realm, so they had to physically observe their surroundings with only their physical eyes. The only conclusions that they could possibly come up with is that it was a spinning globe. Well, guess what? They believed that for thousands of years, and they couldn't really put their theory to the test till about 100 years ago. Meaning, it was just a theory because they had no 100% way to prove it. There was no way to observe it. There was no way to do divination anymore. In a collective way, anyhow. So no one could see the realm they live in. Revolving around the sun. The idea that we revolve around the sun is still a theory. You can track down the roots of masonry to Greek philosophers, and then just follow the Jews. We have Copernicus proving that we revolve around the sun, but you gotta understand, who paid for the publication of these works in the past? Who paid for the research? Well, this has to do with ancient cults and the preserving of secret wisdom. In the era that we know as the Renaissance, this knowledge became alchemy, which is the beginning of our modern science. Alchemy is integrated with the Kabbalah, or the idea of different spheres, or sephiros. They integrated their science with rich symbolism. It becomes obvious that most of these alchemical texts are not for the masses or for instructing. They are for the initiated who have seen past the veil of reality and can see the deeper truth. The idea that we revolve around the sun is against Hermetic and alchemical philosophy. I would argue that their cosmology, as well as Gnostic, is based on a central godhead, separating into different planes, spheres, or sephiroths, aspects of consciousness, and our world is kind of the center of this entire contraption. Meaning, we are in a conscious created universe, and it was made for us. That is what NASA, the media, the elite don't want you to know. Reality is a conscious creation, meaning a product of your mind, and that within it, you are the center of this beautiful creation. Yes, the world revolves around you, not the sun, not Lucifer, not Saturn. Nope, the entire universe revolves around you. I would argue that is the secret of magic, alchemical philosophy, and ancient wisdom, is that material reality is but an aspect of mind. Flat Earth in the modern day.
It's amazing to watch the White House continue to argue that the Earth is flat.
To tell you that your government is keeping you divided.
That's probably one of the better speakers, but the fact that they actually put a visual there is what ruined it. Because it sounded like, and the way they presented it, it was like, well, look, this is the true reality. This is your true cosmology, right? Like giving you a little presentation of the sun. And he's like, right? Because ultimately it doesn't make sense, which is what I'm saying. I'm saying that the reality, the true reality that we live in doesn't make sense, and that we honestly might not be capable of understanding what it is. So when anybody gives a model, it still ends up making them look stupid.
The Flat Earth Society has tweeted back Elon Musk.
What is a flat Earth society, by the way?
People believe the Earth is flat.
Still?
Yeah.
Well, I think we solved that a long time ago.
We did.
You see, and people really try to insist that I'm a moron. Like, how can anybody watch that? And I think that video alone proves my point. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people like that. Honestly, that's the Flat Earth police. Please, like, can we open our eyes a little bit? Now, this is not right. This isn't fair. You know what I mean? It's a deception. They're distorting it with this Flat Earth society, okay? And we're losing touch with who we really are.
This is a day that's going to be etched in history. It's a quest for truth, and it can seem crazy, but all of us laughed at this topic, including myself. This is probably the most ridiculous thing I ever thought that I'd be doing, and here I am organizing the Flat Earth International Conference, but I'm not laughing anymore.
1, 2, 3. We're not crazy!
It's all the same thing, just trying to make them look crazy. And here's the thing, if you have pattern recognition, I mean, it becomes really obvious. Like, I know they do mention some other speakers that are not just Flat Earth Society, but it doesn't matter because it's the whole phrasing, it's the whole presentation. The whole idea is crazy from the beginning. Well, guess what, guys? I'm not with the Flat Earth Society. I'm not gonna say that it's a scam. I'm just gonna say when anyone tries to assume they know what reality is, they get mocked. Especially if you give them a model that can be easily debated. So just get that if you type in Flat Earth, that is what you're going to be met with. Wikipedia is going to reference them, they're going to show you research from their sites, that is what you're going to get. I'm sure some of the people from the Flat Earth Society have honest intentions, but in reality, they're just making these deep truths and these deep esoteric concepts harder to talk about in society. Because now the media is using that, they're going to crutch on that. Right? You see Neil deGrasse Tyson coming on Comedy Central and literally dropping the mic. Well, that's it. There is no discussion because guess what, guys? We're all morons if we even think about this. Okay, well, let's go over Netflix. Don't get me wrong, I like to watch a movie on Netflix every once in a while, but I would say almost every new movie or doc in some way or another is funded by liberals. It's obviously biased to strong themes like social justice, AI, reality is a simulation, and nothing matters, and then a bunch of alternative alt media. I mean, documentaries that you think are going to inform you but do exactly the opposite. Now we have more propaganda with Behind the Curve. Look, first off, most of these people are from the Flat Earth Society. I already touched on that. And you also have to note that most mainstream media won't even touch the occult aspects of Flat Earth. I'm going to play a clip from the film. It's been edited and distorted. I'm just using it for teaching purposes.
Without believing in some giant conspiracy. Because you have to have some reason why all this proof is wrong. And if it's wrong, then it had to have been faked. And if it was faked, well, there you go, there's your conspiracy. And what I always am most curious about is, why would someone bother to fake all this?
Wouldn't it have been great if they just added a Connor McDarry quote like right after she said that? Well, look, we're gonna do that here. From Connor McDarry. It was the idea held by the leaders of the Roman Church and state, they were practically one, that all power should be centralized in the head of the church, who was also emperor of the state, and any and all religious institutions which in any way conflicted with this ideal were to be done away with. For this reason, the mystery cults were suppressed, and initiation into the ancient or esoteric mysteries where no religious establishment, worship, or practice would exist which would draw and hold men to it other than the Roman state church. And besides, as the study and preparation necessary for those who were selected for initiation into the higher mysteries was such as to develop a highly philosophic and spiritual state of mind, such study and preparation did not comport with the object which the church rulers had in view. Such minds would not yield adherence to a mere political and idolatrous church, whose doctrines were, in the main, intended for the uninstructed multitude. Such minds could not be dominated by a political or mercenary priesthood. They were enlightened men and they stood in the way of the church project. Therefore, the institutions which produced such men were to be suppressed. The lack of compassion. When I was young, I had strange dreams where I would wake up and be floating above my bed. I was young and looking for someone to talk about this, and at the time, this was before lucid dreaming and astral projection had blown up on the internet. I just thought of it as being awake in a dream. So I'm hanging out in the pool with some buddies and I asked them, hey, have you guys ever awoke in a dream? We were at my best friend's neighbor's pool, and I remember his friend responding in complete resistance. He literally called me a moron. At the time, he was a bully in other areas, but I find this similar. He wouldn't let me speak about the subject of lucid dreams because he thought it was so absolutely ridiculous that we shouldn't talk about it. Well, guess what? 10 years later, it's one of the hottest topics on the internet. You see, this is our problem with society. We are met with a lack of compassion from people who think they know the answer. Most of the time, the people with a lack of compassion are actually just seeking compassion. Of course, they aren't aware of this, but there is no other explanation why someone would willingly bring hate and negativity to any subject. Look, I get the other side. We have people posting videos and making some crazy assertions, but guess what? That's not me. I'm not trying to prove anything, and I also have my own unique style, so stop labeling people, stop being so critical, and stop letting judgment sway your critical thinking. You are limiting the use of your mind because you are so caught up in trying to make me look stupid. This, of course, is addressing the Flat Earth police. The lack of esoteric knowledge. In my honest opinion, it stems from a lack of esoteric knowledge. If you've seen my video on magic, ancient science explained, then you know a little more about me and my journey. I started studying the occult at a very young age, and this kind of made me delusional, you could say, over time, in that I started to try to figure out my cosmology on my own. I didn't fall for most of the BS because I had experienced the other side. I knew that reality was special. I know that reality can speak to you and you with it. I know about synchronicities that are more than mere coincidence. I'd rather just stay with what I know. But you have millions of people who are told what to believe. Like literally told. They don't question, there's no discussion. Well, at least I don't claim to have the answers. The people who do are not thinking. At least the ones who comment on my videos saying moron. I can tell you that for sure. Here's my perspective. Reality is highly integrated with consciousness. If a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, did it fall? I say no, because reality cannot exist without consciousness. Okay, let's say Johnny and Susie are in a room. Okay, mainstream perspective is this. We have a collective reality, and John and Susie are in this single universe, in a room. Okay, that's probably what 90% of people believe, a collective reality. Okay, but let me present you an alternative that's based on occult and my own research, okay? It's not a single collective reality. It's actually much more advanced than that. Imagine it like this. John is in room A in universe A. Susie is in room B in universe B. John and Susie are experiencing each other, A and B, in room C, universe C. Okay, did I lose you? Basically, each consciousness is experiencing its own version of reality. Then we have a bridge reality that is created from them collectively experiencing each other. I used to watch a lot of Bashar videos when I was young, and I'm not saying I believe it or anything, but I find wisdom in everything. He's the one who enlightened me on the idea of multiple parallel realities and blending that with the concept of being the center of your own reality. In quantum physics, consciousness is a variable in the outcome of the experiment. An electron will switch between a particle and a wave depending on whether you're looking at it or not.
And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double-slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits and it goes through neither. and it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. Physicists were completely baffled by this, so they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. It was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange, never-world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
I'm sure you've heard some version of this famous thought experiment. You put a cat in a bunker with some unstable gunpowder that has a 50% chance of blowing up in the next minute and a 50% chance of doing nothing. The gunpowder is Einstein's version. Schrödinger preferred poisonous gas. But whatever. So until we look in the bunker, we don't know whether the cat is dead or alive. And when we do look, it is either dead or alive. So if we repeat the experiment enough times with enough cats and bunkers and gunpowder, we'll see that half the time, Kitty survives, and half the time, Kitty goes bye-bye. The quantum mechanical interpretation is that before we look, the cat is in a superposition. It's both dead and alive. And our act of looking forces nature's decision. So our curiosity kills the cat.
Reality is not what we think it is, friends, and neither is science.
On the other hand, I think I can safely say that nobody understands quantum mechanics. Now, if you appreciate this and don't take the lecture too seriously, that you really have to understand in terms of some model what I'm going to describe, and just relax and enjoy it, I'm going to tell you what nature behaves like, and if you will simply admit that maybe she does behave like this, you will find her a delightful, entrancing thing. So that's the way to look at the lectures, not to try to understand.
Ancient myths. Many of the ancients had an esoteric perspective of the universe. Remember, I'm not a flat earther. I'm not putting myself into any category other than a thinker. Saying that, I'm not going to make any proofs for flat earth. I liked a lot of the content that Eric Dubai put out, but it wasn't until he made that proofs video that he kind of faded away. I'm still not convinced that we live on a pear spinning 1,000 miles per hour, but the truth is, I don't know what the model is. I still have more development to go through. I'm willing to admit that. But I'm definitely not going to believe what NASA and mainstream media keep shoving down our throats. Let me tell you that. I'm trying to say that I think the model could be beyond our imagination, and anytime someone tries to educate YouTube on the true model of the Earth, they get mocked and completely obliterated. Some of the debunkings by the Flat Earth Police are decent, but they're not amazing. It's not like I'm like, oh wow, what a great point. Most of the time, I'm like, these Flat Earth Police are literally just being jerks. They're bullies. They have to try to be sarcastic and funny to make their point. I trust that soon things will change. I'm willing to sacrifice how people view me, just so we can again tap into that true, genuine curiosity. We have constant themes in ancient myths. A sky dome, barrier, or bubble associated with the fixed stars. Then we have the center tree, or a garden of paradise, and that we have to get to the center and drink from this fountain of youth. In the Vedas, we hear of a complex description of their cosmology. They separate their reality into different metaphysical planes of consciousness. Also, you Hollow Earthers, the scriptures say that the Nagas come from the underworld, so it's not like Hollow Earth theory doesn't work in a flat Earth cosmology. What I think is that Admiral Byrd on his expedition came to the point where he thought was the North Pole, but really he just reached the edge of what the ancients called Hyperborea. He could have assumed that this went into the Earth, when really there was just more land there that he wasn't aware of. There are legends from all around the world that talk about underground realms, like the Ant People from the Hopi legends. I just want to make it clear that the idea of Hollow Earth still works. I just think it's based on a misconception of our cosmology. Some people interpret the Vedas as a physical model. When I read the ancient scriptures, I start to get the feeling that the ego wasn't yet integrated, and therefore they experienced a dream reality. I think it was more solid than what we call dreams now, but basically these myths are from a time when our consciousness was more fragile. We were more nature-based, more feminine, more childlike. When they talk about these different levels of reality, I think they're integrating realms within their own consciousness. In other videos, I will cover these myths individually, and we can look at it from that perspective. I would be interested to see the conclusions that you come to. There are many books in our modern day that talk about the astral plane and its inhabitants. I think this becomes relevant. Why is it that occultists for centuries have referred to this as the astral plane? Once you dig deeper, you find that there's more planes. You have the etheric plane, an upper and lower astral, a mental plane, and an akashic plane. In the Kabbalah, you can relate these planes to the different sephiroths. There are different realms of consciousness. Material reality is but one of these realms. What modern man can't wrap its mind around is the idea that reality is within the mind. Summary. If you made it this far, then you truly are curious. I don't claim to know the answers, but I will call BS when I see it. I'm willing to learn and adapt. Please, if you can convince me, do so, and do it in a manner that doesn't crush on the idea that I'm a moron, or am completely ignorant of my reality. Just be fair and be like, look, I disagree with you here and there, and prove me wrong with some strong evidence. If it's good and an honest explanation, I promise you, I will look at it. In my opinion, you can't make the subject go away with hate and negativity. You're just pushing people farther apart. Back to the story of my roommate, if you've watched my video on magic. You see, my roommate reminds me of you Flat Earth Police. He was addicted to Reddit. He thought he knew it all. He was very judgmental and critical. We actually really had a lot in common, but we just could not meet because our perception of reality was so drastically different from each other. The true difference was, I wanted to be his friend. I drove him to class every day, but he did not want to be my friend. He always mocked me and he thought my ideas were crazy. I honestly think if he would have let go of that, we could have been closer. Maybe have done better in school. But anyways, the point is, I get into these arguments with the Flat Earth Police, and I know we probably have so much in common. And I try so hard to be reasonable, fair, and respectful, but that just doesn't cut it. So this is my attempt. I hope I've caught your interest, and if you've actually felt something, then help me. Talking about this subject in an esoteric light can truly open the door to the subject matter reaching the masses. Not only that, we can stop the suppression of free speech. If you can help me make this topic something that is a matter of discussion, especially in philosophic circles, then I believe we can change the human race. We have to stop thinking that we know it all. This is why we have lost touch with the esoteric arts. We have lost touch with our inner guides. We have lost touch with our inner minds. All I can hope is that our minds may be unveiled. I want to thank all the people who took the time to comment on my videos. It really means a lot that you guys support my thoughts. Energy is energy. We have to work together to figure out what's really going on and the truth of our history and the nature of who we really are. Much love to all of you, and more videos soon.
Let go of everything you think to be true. Relax the mind and ask the question, do I truly understand what this reality is?